if you live a checklist life, does that mean that every day is fulfillment? And I was like, oh, it's kind of an interesting thought. And it's like, no, because even if you finish the checklist, you can still feel unhappy. And so I've kind of just been more open-minded to not just having to always do the checklist, but like, how does each day feel fulfilled? And how do I just be nicer to myself? Like I planned ahead for something that's coming on Friday. And I just took a moment to say, all right, Noah, I'm really proud of you. Instead of just only focusing on, if I finish my checklist today, I'm going to be happy and life will be great.
Hey everybody, this is Jason Mark Campbell. Welcome back to Superhumans at Work, and I have a truly superhuman to present to you today. If you are someone that's always been looking to grow what it is that you're creating as a business, are you a marketer? Are you someone that's coming up with creative ideas or wanting to start a business? Some of these problems can be solved when you start following a gentleman by the name of Noah Kagan. If some of you have heard of products such as AppSumo, Sumo, SendFox, or King Sumo, these are some of the tools that can be made available when you follow this gentleman who's just been an incredible human when it comes to finding these ideas, scaling them, and then also finding ways to optimize their routines and their productivity to the highest level possible. I wanted to go through specific topics in this interview, but rather I want to go and give you an overview of all the incredible things that you could do to really become closer to being a superhuman yourself. And Noah Kagan is going to share some of these ideas with us. Now, before he did Sumo and AppSumo, he was a 30th employee at Facebook, reporting directly to Mark Zuckerberg. And he was the 4th employee at Mint, which was more of an accounting software. And now he's an expert when it comes to starting businesses and teaches everything he knows about marketing and business on his YouTube channel. We'll ensure that we have a link in the description below. And he writes about marketing on okdork.com. This is a blog you'll definitely want to follow as well. And so it is with my great pleasure that I bring Noah Kagan to the show. Noah, welcome.
If it's on podcast, I'm bowing.
You're bowing.
It's pretty amazing if you hear what you've done. I'm like, who did all that? Sometimes it's pretty wild. I think everyone should think about that. But thank you for having me.
You know, it's a blessing when you have someone else that just takes a moment and kind of reads your bio and you're just like, all right, I'm doing all right, which kind of kicks us off. We're here in a very interesting time, 2020, the time of interesting time, I would say. And I want to kick off with like checking in on you because I know you've been running a lot of different businesses. I think just before you mentioned you have also done a bit of a trip and a kind of a discovery tour around America. So tell us what's been going on in both your personal life and your business life in this interesting year.
I mean, it's been a wild ride for everyone. Honestly, Corona and then specifically 2020 has been a blessing for myself. I feel like it was a really great kick in my tuchus, a great wake up call. And I think it just shows to me, and I think for a lot of people, what's important. And I just feel blessed by, not blessed with all the death stuff, but blessed that it kind of focused and forced us to make some decisions in our life. So across the board, it's been amazing. What I do each year is I have a word of the year. And so the word this year is congruency. And so I wanted to behave the same in my business life. Like in our businesses, sometimes we're like, all right, we have budgets and we have plans and we have strategies, which may be a little rigid, but it's also how you get what you want. And then I was trying to replicate that in my personal and in my relationship life. And so it's been amazing. Definitely there was fear and uncertainty early on when people February of this year. But the biggest thing is just putting plans in place and kind of following the plan is giving me a lot more influence and control of the things I can do in my life. And so we can talk about that or whatever else you think would be most helpful to the audience.
Well, you touch on something very interesting. This idea of having a bit more control in times of uncertainty seems to be a lot of a mental liberation. And I know you speak a lot also about like mental health when it comes to, how do we take care of ourselves? Because for you, like you've been someone I've always watched as an extremely successful entrepreneur, yet I know there's some certain things that you need to apply so that you keep your head on your shoulders and there's a lot of stresses that can come through. So congruency, I find is an interesting term, and putting all these systems in place to find more freedom in the process seems counterintuitive because some people are saying, wow, I put up these structures. It feels like it's taking away my freedom. Yet at the same time, it seems like it's bringing some of that freedom. So how do you deal with that duality, and where does your perspective lie when it comes to finding these systems to find freedom?
Well, the two things that come to mind, it's interesting when there's an absence of something. So I have an assistant. I have two assistants. One is local and one is remote. And when I say that now more than ever, it's affordable for everyone. You can use a service like TimeDoc, and the absence of having an assistant, she's on vacation, which is awesome. I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff I do that's not really a great use of my time. And I think for everyone out there that wants to be superhuman, uh, I do think I'm a more productive person than most people, but I think that's because I find amazing people, or I figure out what tools can I use that help me be more productive, or the tools I use, like my computer. How do I type twice as fast so that I have more productivity and I have more output? But specifically, having the assistant is a game changer, and she's gone. So I was like, damn, there's so much more things that I'm wasting time on that are not great use of time. And so I think everyone can look at their calendar from last week and just look over your week of what you did and be like, what's my priority, and what stuff did I have that was related to that. So I think that's something that's been a pretty big game changer for me, because now my calendar is very intentional about what I call it my purple zone, which is my productivity zone. That I'm in that zone a lot of the week. And the second thing related to your question that's been pretty interesting is around fulfillment. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, what is fulfillment? What is purpose? We're all on this planet that's spinning around, woo, and we're like, what the hell are we doing here? And that question, I don't know the answer exactly, but I do know in terms of fulfillment, you can really find it every day. Just even in having a conversation like this, going for a walk, just appreciating things. And what I noticed myself doing in terms of productivity and being superhuman, I would have a checklist. So I use an app called Strides, and I have a checklist, and it's like each day I want to do all these things that help me build good habits. And I generally think, hey, this stuff generally makes me have a good day. I should make sure I do it every day. And I have two therapists, and one of them said, well, if you live a checklist life, does that mean that every day is fulfillment? And I was like, oh, it's kind of an interesting thought. And it's like, no, because even if you finish the checklist, you can still feel unhappy. And so I've kind of just been more open-minded to not just having to always do the checklist, but like, how does each day feel fulfilled? And how do I just be nicer to myself, especially during this period, to like, what are small things going down from like, hey, like I planned ahead for something that's coming on Friday. And I just took a moment to say, all right, no, I'm really proud of you. Instead of just only focusing on, if I finish my checklist today, I'm going to be happy and life will be great. Because it doesn't always work out that way. So one, I don't know how long COVID's going to last. I don't know if anyone does. I kind of just assume it's going to last indefinitely. And given that, I think there's been winners and losers. And I know that's a little bit harsh, and I don't want anyone to be a loser, but there's people who have taken advantage of it in a non-shady way that's very impressive. And then there's people that are sitting on the sidelines complaining about it. And so I've been trying to be a cheerleader for people out there to be like, yo, there's literally unlimited opportunity, especially on the interwebs, for people that want to start making a difference. I put out a video on youtube.com/okdork recently, and the video is 3 businesses that I've seen other people start that blew my mind. That I was like, wow, anyone can do this. One guy was an accountant, lost his job, but he's always been a baker. So he started posting on his Facebook page like, hey, does anyone want chocolate chip cookies? And I think some of the most successful, fun, amazing, large businesses are really just solving your own problems. And I think where people make mistakes a lot of times is they're like, oh, I heard on this podcast that this one guy did a business like this, so I'm going to copy that. And that could work, but I generally feel like that flames out versus, hey, I'm Jason. I really want to solve making better t-shirts, or I want to solve making better glasses, or I want a service that does this. And so I like that guy was like, yeah, I've always wanted to be a baker. Another one I saw, I think people like hearing examples because it kind of inspires things for them to go do. I think that and I'll give a few more examples, but one thing to really think about, especially during COVID, is that to start a business, people assume you have to take a lot of risk. You don't. You have to spend a lot of time. You don't. You have to spend a lot of money. You don't. Now more than ever, like you don't have to buy servers. You know, it's like crazy how easy it is to start any of these kind of websites. Like you can start a lot of these websites using Google spreadsheets or Google Docs. Another business I saw was people were trying to do a new type of marketplace. So you know how there's Airbnb in America, there's Turo, which is car rentals, RV share and outdoorsy are big on RVs. And I saw someone doing it for items, like local items. So they used Facebook Marketplace to list their backpacks, these like coolers and backpacks, and said, you can rent my cooler for $25. So I went on Facebook Marketplace and listed my bicycle to see if I could start, just to show as an example, a bicycle rental company. And I said, hey, it's $50 for this bike, the premium bike and all this stuff. And people started messaging me. I was like, it's pretty damn neat. The forced function that COVID has done to force people online, the idea that my mom knows what Zoom is kind of bonkers, right? If you think about that, it's forced people to kind of take a chance to look online for a lot of their actions. The great part about that is that if you're in Malaysia, if you're in India, if you're in Israel, if you're in Europe, if you're anywhere in the world, you can create a business that has a customer base of billions of people. And another business I saw that was great was a book company. So it's called the adventurechallenge.com. And these guys created an adventure book. So if you have a relationship or a family, you can go do adventures together. So especially now while you're kind of stuck at home or you're not really wanting to interact with people, it's a great book that you go and you like do activities and you scratch it off. And I love the idea of that because you don't have to print a book. You don't have to do anything. What you really have to do to that is you can text a friend. This is what I did. I texted a friend, Anton. I said, hey, I'm just to show it to other people. I'm working on a relationship book, Anton. Here's 10 relationship activities I'm going to put in the book. Would you prepay $5? And once the book is done, I'll send it to you. And he's like, actually, I would prepay more than that. And I was like, oh shit, that's kind of wild. But I think the thing with starting businesses, just taking a step back on this is just a few examples of how to do them for free and fast, which I think is really important because you have to figure out what people want. And I've had the opposite thing where I've done a lot of things that no one wanted. But the real thing that most people need to figure out, and I still struggle with at times, is what do we really want? That's the part that's actually, no one, people are like, I want to run my own business. I'm like, well, why? Because I don't want this. Well, it's like, you can actually find a job that does all that, especially now because with COVID, you can work remotely. And so I think the thing that was interesting for me to reflect on with AppSumo, which is now, we have like, almost 100 people and it's like a $30 million plus business. I'm like, this is kind of crazy. Because when I started the company, my only purpose or my intent was to make $3,000 a month and work internationally. That was all I wanted. And that's pretty accessible. And so now it's kind of, it is revisiting, all right, well, what do I really want now? And how do I align myself to doing that? So I think that's the part that people need to spend more time on. And then starting the business stuff, I don't know, I generally find that not as hard. I think for businesses or life in general, the dream to me for everyone is, what do you get to wake up and do for free? That to me is the dream, right? Like I've been blogging on okdort.com for 20 years now. I don't ever really even make money on it. It just gives me a chance to meet cool people. And once in a while we'll do promotions, but that's very few and far between. So even if I never got paid for it, I would keep doing it. And I think that's kind of the question that we all need to really get into. And I think there's different generations. My parents' generation, yours probably as well. My dad was an engineer and my mom was a nurse. And I would say for the most part, they didn't love their jobs, but they're like, I got to do this another 20 years. I can retire at 60, which they did. And now they can enjoy, the rest of life, hopefully very long. But I think our generation is like, how do I enjoy now? And I think the easiest way to do that is just find the thing that you can work on for free. And that ultimately actually ends up making you a lot of money is what I found. So I've always liked marketing and promoting. And so I was like, oh, I could start a business that just does that. And somehow now I get to make money doing it. And I think there's a lot of different ideas around that. So like right now, I just got back. I look like crap. You guys can't see it on the podcast because I just did bike packing. It's where you put a camping equipment on your bike and then you bike whatever, and then you camp and then you bike back. So next year I'm biking across America. And so I'm just really into that. I'm really into like the gear and the weight and the routes. And to me, it's like, all right, well, I don't want to start more businesses per se. A lot of what our company does is help people create businesses. So how do we help we call them the underdogs or the sumolings. So either through YouTube or the different tools we create or the tools we promote, do that. But I think there's just unlimited amount of businesses to create. And so for me, I just try to, especially as I've gotten more money, to be frank, the more money I've gotten, the more I'm like, I really need to focus on what I want to do versus what I have to do. And so it's like, all right, well, next year I want to do a bike pack across America. All right, let's go into that. And I think the same thing goes for professional life, which is just keep going into what you want to do, not what you have to do. And if you have a day job, suck that up for a little while. While in the mornings, lunches, nights, weekends, you start the thing that really kind of gets you going, that you work on for free. I think what I find is that if you reflect back on what you spend your free time doing and what gets you excited, like I've always been a promoter. That's just something that I've always done. And so when I got the job at mint.com, they ended up selling for 200 million. I wasn't they hired me for marketing, and I never did marketing, quote unquote, before. But I was like, here's what I'll do for marketing. Here's how I'll organize it. And I came up with the plan, and they're like, oh, you seem pretty good at this. Why don't you go do that? Originally, I didn't even get the job because I brought a plan to them. They ended up hiring me and said, all right, do this plan. If you do it great, we'll actually hire you full time. And so I think what's helpful for everyone is just reflect back on what you've been doing that actually got you excited, that woke you up in the morning, that kind of kept you interested at night. And for me lately, it's been YouTube stuff. I'm like, all right, like right now I'm making a video about 5 new ways that you can invest money. And most of them are stupid. It's like wine investing, art investing, certain real estate. It's all these new sites that I've seen that are just kind of like off the beaten path. And I just find them really interesting. So it's exciting to be able to share that. And I think for everyone out there, just one, I think learning how to promote in general is an amazing skill. But it's easier to find stuff to promote when you just find stuff you already like. And you're just like, oh my God, I have to tell people about this restaurant or this movie or this book. And I think that's what I've kind of done. Like at AppSumo, we find tools we love and we promote them on the site.
Mm. I mean, we've used your tools at Mind Valley. I think they still do, actually. And I like this idea of just looking at our natural tendencies of how we behave and what do we get excited about. Because even the person who would quote unquote not say they're not a salesperson, and this is something that's really close to my heart, but naturally you see someone that says they're not a salesperson, but ask them about something of interest and ask them to describe to you how this X, Y, Z happens within something they're passionate about. And they'll like light up, and then they'll start talking about it. And then you'll be drawn into the conversation with their enthusiasm. And then you're like, hold on, it's pretty salesy without being actually salesy. So it's almost like we have it naturally when we're aligned to that quote unquote passion. Even if those blog posts are going to say one thing or another online, I think there's still a clue. Like, should you be going out and not doing your passion for the rest of your life? Then what kind of life are you living, right? That's my 2 cents.
Well, I'll only add 1 cent, because then I'll let yours be the bigger sense. I think the fascinating thing is like my brother, as an example. He went to medical school as a doctor. But the way he's approached life, I actually find kind of fascinating, is that he is really working backwards from what kind of life he wants to live, and then what work does he have to do to make that lifestyle happen. Whereas I think people are like, well, I got to get a job and I got to do all this stuff. And it's like, well, why? And stopping to ask that why question is really hard, because society is, if you're not working and people are like, well, what are you doing? They're like, I don't know. I'm just kind of hanging out right now. It's like really frowned upon. But my brother, for him, it's really important to mountain bike a lot, hang out with this kid. And he doesn't really like working in a hospital. So he works about 3 hours a day, and he makes a lot less. I don't want to talk about his salary publicly, but he makes a lot less than he could if he did other things, which my mom always complains about. She's like, Seth, you're not making as much money. Why don't you work more? Go to work. And I think that's a really important theme for everyone, is how do you want to be living? Do you want a lot of things? There's no bad answer. It's just like, how do you want to live? Where do you want to live? And then what's the actual amount of money required for that? And then how do you create a work experience that actually gives you that life? And I think that's, for me, like, I'm like, I can't believe I get to live this life. And honestly, a lot of it I would attribute to the people we've hired at the company, at appsumo.com. And just being able to do my best to stay the hell out of their way, which is, I'm annoying. So it's not always easy. But that's been able to let me, the past 6 months I've been living in the West Coast and traveling or living at my mom's house. And I think for me, that's the dream. Like that, I literally, or in the beginning of the year, I was like, dude, my dream would be to like live on the road and mountain bike and make videos from different places. And it's just so amazing that I've been able to do that and live the lifestyle I want. I want everyone to be able to do that.
It's really interesting, because some people would actually, like you said, they'll judge that. Our culture, especially in America, it's like, the amount of hours and the amount of stress you're able to bear in a single week is kind of your chip on your shoulder of how you're doing well, or like, I don't know, that seems so messed up. Yet here, what you're saying is you can really get clear on what is it that you want to create, which a lot of time we don't even take the time to step back and be like, wait, why am I working so hard? And what's the end goal? If the work itself is the play, then, there's a lot of beauty in that. But then if you have these hobbies, these natural things you want to work on, nurture, that bring you that fulfillment, which I think is a key part of living a great life here, then you can actually pair up as to why you're working so hard, and then really look to optimize that. You speak about your brother, working 3 hours a day. We're going to go through a process where the whole world is going through automation. There's a lot of these jobs that are disappearing. Well, at the end of the day, maybe it's just we need to rethink that kind of model of how many hours we're supposed to work and actually focus like crazy on the things that actually make a big difference. And I don't think that's the question most people are asking themselves. And so I'm glad you're bringing this up and kind of challenging that status quo. And this would be an interesting way to kind of tail this off, is like, what are you noticing within your own businesses, as well as trends with the clients that you serve, about what's happening when it comes to this work-life balance lifestyle? Are you seeing a positive trend, or are you seeing a negative trend?
Yeah. I mean, two things I want to add. This is like if you could watch the US debates, like you'd ask a question and then they would answer with other answers. So I have to do a little bit of that for a sec. So
I'm sure we're not going to go that bad. I've seen the highlights of those debates, and that's,
Dude, it's gnarly. It's gnarly. Well, 2 quick things. So just to highlight one point is that right now I'm spending my time focused on YouTube and educating and sharing the things we're learning at AppSumo, and products and things that I'm excited about to share with underdogs and people starting businesses or on their business journey. The one thing that I find fascinating, if you really think about it, is that the most lucrative or the most ROI compared to like creating more software or building other businesses? Probably not. And I think that for me, I guess I'm a little proud of myself, but I think it's just interesting for all of us to reflect on that stuff where it's very easy to be like, oh, I should make more money. It's like, well, should you? So I think that's kind of a fascinating thing to do. And another thing is before this call, I just got back from the lawyer's office where I finalized my will. That was weird, man. That was just weird. It's like, all right, when you die, where do you want this money to go? And it was almost interesting to be like, well, what's the point of having all this money go somewhere later? And it's just interesting. I don't really have like a very profound thing to think about versus like, oh, I will probably die. And is there ways that I could give the money away while I'm alive or use the money for more enjoyment for myself and others now? And also what happens after I die? Like, I guess it's going to go to my brother who's going to do stuff with it. So just kind of interesting questions I don't think we really ever think about until maybe a lot later. So it's just interesting to kind of have that happen sooner.
Well, I was going to maybe dig on this a bit more. Is like, do you find that this idea, like, I feel like it's kind of a moment of facing your mortality. Does it get you to kind of kick your own butt into doing more of what is fulfilling as opposed to realizing, oh, maybe I'll do that one day since I'll live forever?
Yeah, I think we all think we're going to live forever, and I'd like to live forever. So I actually always encourage people not to say that, because I think if we have the idea we could live forever, someone might solve it. But if we think, oh, we're going to die, then it's kind of like, all right, we're going to just give up anyways. Yeah, it definitely, I think, makes me be more mindful of mind valleyful of spending and enjoying the money I have more now. I think there's a little bit of taboo, and depending on where you live and how you grew up, like, oh, money's evil, materialism's evil. But I think it could really enhance your life. And I think for a lot of people like myself who grew up probably middle class and then have made some money, it's hard to ever break out of that, where I'm still in like discount mode and deal mode versus like, oh, if I just didn't sweat it so much, I could get nicer places and have a little bit more enjoyment in life. And so just kind of interesting I think the bigger theme there is like everyone has a different relationship with money, and the reality that we probably might die, hopefully not, I think just gives us different consideration of how to enjoy it. And I don't know. I think the idea of like working till 60 and doing some shit job like my parents, no offense to them, but that was what they were raised as. And then now you're 60, you can live. And I'm like, why don't we just all live now? And so in terms of your original question about what have I observed in COVID, there's actually like at our office, we actually have a good amount of people. Some people want that. I think I'm just super excited that everyone can work remote. I mean, super excited that overpriced commercial real estate can change. I'm really curious to see how housing development evolves. Like, do they always build offices and houses now? Are there going to be more community offices? Like, so there's like housing with a centralized office that anyone could work from home. I'm curious how international countries are going to rise up. I'm always amazed that these international people, they work harder, they're nicer. For now, they get paid less. But I'm curious to see how that evolves. And I do think this whole online thing, it's been big, but now it's like super rapidly accelerated. And so I'm curious to see how like, companies like Mind Valley and AppSumo have done really well, as well as, a lot of online companies. And so it worries me the transition from some of the offline businesses and how they, who's gonna fight and sustain, and who's gonna kind of give up and just blame the government or blame the virus for their downfall.
Yeah, I feel like it was Tara Nicole Nielsen that I interviewed a little while back, gave a label to it called the Great Reset. Like, this is really what we're going through right now. And I love that you've highlighted a lot of these awesome trends that are happening as well for allowing this international community to develop. This also, I'm predicting that, with all this remote work, there's a lot of people who are going to decide, hey, why am I in this concrete jungle that seems to suck the life out of me while I'm paying through the roof for my rent for a place that doesn't have the freedom that I'm looking for? So I think lifestyle design is going to become huge. I mean, already I'm witnessing what's going on. I'm here in Bali, Indonesia, not a terrible place to be. And I'm expecting, real estate, housing, people having like remote opportunities here. And I'm seeing governments finally getting themselves to kick in the butt to update their visa regulations for this generation of remote workers and digital nomads. Because you look at, hey, when you have people like Americans that go into a country, have a lifestyle, generate money online and spend it in the local economy, we're getting a direct feedback of what happens when tourism is out and when lifestyle entrepreneurs are getting to stay, or workers, remote workers being able to stay there, spend, not take away any job, but actually create a lot of jobs, is just seeing a lot of that wealth distribution, which I think in the end of the day makes the world a lot better.
Turks and Caicos did a thing, or Barbados is doing a thing where they're paying people to come. Is that the country?
No, actually, well, I've heard of something like this, but there was a list I saw of like the 7 countries that are really like moving on this trend. For example, I know Thailand just introduced a 9-month visa where you pay for this visa, you can work remotely, so you're allowed to work, and all you need to do is quarantine for 2 weeks, so you can be corona free. They have it under control
Dude,
there,
that's awesome.
and then you can go live and work from Thailand, and their internet speeds are ridiculously fast. So this is some interesting trends. You would have never heard of these types of regulations being in place, but now you're seeing Thailand's doing that, and then all the other countries that have a lot of these digital nomads staying there, making money, especially through like e-commerce and stuff. They're all going like, wait a minute, we should be working on keeping the people too. And now these visa regulations are being updated. So I think it's a fascinating trend.
So awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
man.
it's that, and then all the new business ideas that are coming about because of these limitations. So like there's rental vans where you can rent vans, different types of house ownership. I saw different types of renting your rooms as office spaces. And so just like 2008, when a lot of businesses came out like Stripe and Uber and AppSumo and a lot of these, pretty sizable companies, it's like, who is going to be the one creating the next generation of business based on these limitations? I love seeing this stuff, man. I'm excited.
It's a great shakeup as well. And I think for anybody that's listening to this and is inspired to say, hey, maybe that I should start looking for what actually makes me happy, brings fulfillment. Maybe I should get all my productivity under control. And at this point, I would tell you definitely go and follow all of the content being produced by Noah Kagan. We're going to have some show notes that are going to include most of the links that you need to be able to go deeper into your research and find all these methods of productivity. You'll be able to find all these favorite productivity tools, ways to get on top of your email, your tasks, building better habits. These are all amazing articles that you can find that have been created by Noah that you can apply directly. But truly, once you've gotten a handle on that, it's about getting clear on what brings you fulfillment. And if this idea is to start something new within a company and validating that idea, it can be done. If you want to go and be starting a business, finding your first 100 clients or making your first $1,000, it's easier now than ever to be able to do it. There's a lot less barriers to entry. As Noah mentioned, you don't need to go out and buy servers. A lot of times you can get started with super low cost. And you're hearing about these strange ideas of businesses that work, which have this element of having something that brings you excitement, a problem that you want to solve in the world that actually is worth solving, is something that you should really be able to take the time and look into. As I mentioned, I've been on that journey of trying to figure out, hey, what is it that I truly want? If I'm independent, I don't have the company that I get to align with, because if you're someone working for a job, ensure that what it is that you want, you can align with those values, which is something I've done for a long time with Mindvalley. But if you're on your own, don't just create for the sake of creating. Look at how it all ties in together. Take a moment to step back and make a choice. It's not going to be perfect. It can be changed at any time, but at this point, you can actually find something that you can go for and start creating. And you'll see that you'll discover more yourself. More tools are going to be laid out for you to be able to go further and have that extra freedom, have that extra time, redefine how you want to work. It doesn't need to be all the time. You can see that we're going to be working less. You can hire assistants, and there's so many ways to be more optimized that you'll have that extra time, that extra freedom to do the things that you want, whether it is the work or the play that you do in between the work. There's no perfect recipe, and we're all here to do some incredible stuff. So with that, Noah, thank you so much for spending some time with me and sharing these incredible insights. And for everybody here, thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Jason Mark Campbell, and this is the Selling with Love podcast.